Welcome to our broadcast. Jack Lemmon's 40 years in movies and on stage represent one of the great acting journeys of our time. From Mr. Roberts and Some Like It Hot to A Long Day's Journey into Night and Glengarry Glen Ross, Jack Lemmon has gone from being our best light comedian to being one of our best tragic dramatic actors. Along the way, he's won 2 Oscars and has been honored for Lifetime Achievement by the American Film Institute. This year, he will be seen in 3 movies, count them, 3. TNT's presentation of David Mamet's A Life in the Theater, Robert Altman's much-talked-about film Shortcuts, and with his good friend Walter Matthau in Grumpy Old Men. We're very pleased to have Jack Lemmon here for a conversation that I've been looking forward to for a while. Welcome.
Thank you, Charlie.
Great to have you here.
With you.
Let me first talk about David Mamet and go back to Glengarry Glen Ross, because when that came along and you saw that script, tell me what you thought and what did it say to you? And
I just felt it's a peculiar thing. When I was a kid, well, I was in movies, but I was a kid.
Yeah, right.
Anyhow, the 40 years that you mentioned, those first 4 or 5 of those years, every time I'd do an interview, I'd get these funny looks from, who the hell do you think you're kidding, you know, because I kept saying that I couldn't, I was in my 20s now, around the time I was doing Pulver or something, and I kept saying I can't wait to get older because the parts get richer. Well, I really believed that. Yeah. And it's true, and all the other actors on Broadway and in New York that I really respected all said the same thing. The parts get richer, you get older, you know more, you can play parts better. Well, it's true. There are great parts when you get older. What they didn't tell me is there's fewer of them.
Yes. So they get richer, but fewer.
Now, I had seen a lot of David's plays, and I had read David's plays, but I had never acted in one of David's plays. And all of a sudden, along came Glengarry, and it kept coming along and coming along, coming along. It was several years before he got off the ground, despite the fact that it had won a Pulitzer Prize.
Because people said what? That it was too dark,
Probably too dark, that the language would be a turn-off. I don't know. I have no idea. Whatever it was that the studios felt were the ingredients to make a, quote, hit, unquote, because it's always approached, you know, from an economic point of view rather than an artistic one. I suppose that's understandable if you're putting the money up. At any rate, it just sat there. And then finally it did get off the ground. And once it did, and the actors fell in, I mean, that probably is the best overall cast I've ever worked with.
Incredible. With Pacino and you and Ed Harris and Alex Baldwin and who am I leaving out?
The Baldwin part was added. That was never in the play. And David added that. And I think that, to me, the screenplay was even superior.
The screen was better than the play?
I think so, even though the play won the Pulitzer Prize. I think that Alex's part, which he played brilliantly, I think really explained the situation and early on in the film and really let people know the pressure that these guys were under, which was enormous.
For those who haven't seen this film or saw the play, it's about the tough life of a real estate salesman. The play was set in Chicago, the movie's set in New York. It's about selling land, and you play your character.
Shelley the Machine Levine.
Shelley the Machine Levine, who is who is without a moral center, who is without...
They all are to an extent.
Yeah.
You know what, it's interesting. In a peculiar way, as individual a writer and as brilliant as David is, I think he's probably our greatest American playwright right now, and certainly in a handful of the great playwrights in the world. As individual as he is still, there is a commonality. Is there such a word as that?
Yes.
Anyhow, that's good. Yes. I'm getting better. With Save the Tiger, which I did way back in '72, in this sense that they both are concerned with the misuse of the American dream underneath it all. It's the erosion, I think, of ethics and tenets of behavior that we would look up to when I was a kid anyway, that my father would live by. Yeah. If my father ever saw the way I behaved and Al behaved and everybody else in that movie, if he were alive today as a businessman, he would say, I don't believe this.
I don't know any businessman like that.
What has happened to this country? And it's right. What has happened to this country from, you know, there were smatterings of it from the Teapot Dome on, but certainly from Watergate on. You could feel it. You could feel this erosion in which the ends justify the means, and certainly they did there.
Save the Tiger, though, was about a man who was who had plenty of wealth, was just trying to be greedy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But,
on the other hand,
but the material things were the only things that
cared
meant
about
anything.
There
really,
was no,
to him, you know?
there was no value beyond.
That's it.
And on the other hand,
beyond the buck.
And what do you try? Save the Tiger won an Oscar for you, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But what do you try? How do you look inside this character? Because some people thought that Lemmon will find a way to make him interesting because he'll be a little bit sympathetic. But was that what you wanted to do to this guy?
It's very interesting. I did everything I could with Jamie Foley, and I would speak to Al
Foley
about
was a
this
director.
and to my other guys. I'd say, if you see me sliding into anything in any reading where you think I'm playing it in a way that might gain sympathy when I could be playing it another way, holler, let me know. I did everything I could not to make the character sympathetic. The first review picked up said, somehow Lemmon made this man sympathetic. He's a terrible human being, and Lemmon makes you care about him. He's a despicable guy. I said, I'm delighted you made me, that you think I made it. I did everything I could. He's not a nice man. Yeah. I did not like him. I did not like the character in Save the Tiger, but I cared about him. Yeah. Now, when I say I didn't, I cared about him in the sense that you would care about Richard, you know, who's murdering kids and trying to assume the throne and everything else in Shakespeare. Because he's fascinating, and he's interesting, and he is human. Right. Decent people can do indecent things. There's no question about that. It's the erosion of character as much as it is the erosion of the tenets of behavior that we might respect. But somehow or other, poor Shelley is up against it to such an extent that there is a built-in sympathy, I think, no matter how rotten the character basically may behave. Because
his life is in balance or something, his survival or whatever.
And he has his daughter in the hospital, which is just barely touched on. Yeah. And he can't even get a bailer out of the hospital. He can't even get the money there. Yeah. And he keeps saying, well, I'll get the money in the morning. They turn the phone off in her room and everything. I mean, all of these things, it's very hard to combat feeling sorry for a guy like that. And on top of that, Jamie Foley had it raining, pouring rain every time I put my head out the door. Yes, so I was like a drowned rat.
Yeah.
But
you once said, back to Save the Tiger, that you got too invested in the character. What did you mean? Some sense that you can't,
well, there's a very dangerous ground that sometimes, not often, an actor goes through a period where, whether he realizes it or not, a character can begin to take over the actor. And that's no good. Rather than the actor take over the character. You know, as kids today, or when I was a kid too, and the method was it, the method act. I'm a method actor. Everybody that even uses his brain before he goes on stage for 10 seconds is a method actor. It's how you use the method. Everybody has their own individual way. But there's times when you get in a character, and I don't know why some characters will do it more than others, where you don't even realize that character is taking over, and your behavior is changing. The worst example was when, halfway through Save the Tiger, I was driving to work, and I would just start sobbing, and I didn't know why. I'm all alone in the car. It's God's truth. And I was almost unaware of it. I was just into this thing. The second time it happened, it all happened in the same week, almost every morning. A cop pulled me over. I was talking to myself, and the tears were coming down and everything. I was ranting. And he pulled me over, and he thought I was drunk at about 8:30 in the morning. And I said, no, I'm sorry, no, I'm on the way. He said, oh, and he recognized me. I was on the way to on the way downtown to location, shooting. What was happening was the character was having a nervous breakdown. He was walking around having a nervous breakdown, literally. And eventually he starts hallucinating, seeing soldiers in an audience of civilians and so forth that weren't there. I was having a nervous breakdown. And what was happening was, it was happening to me. The moment I realized that's what it was, it stopped.
You could shut it down.
You can shut it down. But an actor must never really, I don't care how realistically he's playing a part, and I don't think there is a good actor on the face of the earth that would disagree with me. The whole thing of, wouldn't it be ideal if I could become the character? If I could really, literally become Hamlet? Well, what might happen is that you would be on stage, and you went so far that you became Hamlet, and you turned up stage and started to whisper to yourself, to be or not to be, that is the question. And the whole audience says, what the hell's he saying? What? I mean, it's a total failure.
Yeah.
You must not let the character take you over.
But I do hear of actors who say they want to inhabit the character and
Sure.
stay in character, even
Yes.
when they're not human. I mean, during the entire performance over
Exactly.
a series
Yeah.
of...
You do want to, and you will.
Yeah.
And you do stay in character, but there is that fine line where you still are in control. There is a little light in the back that's looking down and is in control of what you're doing. You are making the character behave. Don't let the character make you behave.
Yeah. Let me go back now to first of all, Glengarry Glen Ross. Who wanted you? Was it David Mamet, or was it the director or the producer?
I think it was the producer who first wanted me. I guess David was being consulted.
Yeah, and you had to go read with Pacino?
Yes, but what we were doing then was Al and I were set.
Right.
And we were now reading everybody else.
Okay, you didn't have to audition for this, I guess,
No.
is my point. You know,
No.
I mean, they wanted you.
I would have.
You would have.
I would
you
have.
saw
Absolutely,
this
I
was
would
a piece,
Yes.
as you said.
Absolutely. At this point in my life, I think that two of the most wonderful things that could ever happen to me, especially on top of all the good fortune I've already had, I'm now speaking professionally,
Right.
would be to get that part of David Mamet's, and then suddenly the next year to get a life in the theater.
That's what I'm coming to.
Again,
Yeah.
to get this second part written by David is just a one in a million shot to me.
What makes this astounding to me, and to understand it, is here you are with 2 Oscars and 8 nominations and Tony nominations and all that you have done, both comedy and drama. You're saying, boy, when you get a good script,
Yeah.
I mean, it makes your life. I mean, you
Oh,
wake
sure.
up and you say, this is more than work. This is what they're paying me to
Yeah.
do what I came to do, and to use all that I have experienced, all that I have,
Absolutely.
learned. And you don't get that much. You don't find those kinds of things.
See, the worst thing, really, about a so-called successful career. Now, I'm using success the way we normally use it, which is wrong, but somebody else's opinion. When I say Charlie is successful or this and that, or whoever it is successful, we're usually thinking in terms of how well he is known and how much money he makes. Basically, it should be how you feel about yourself.
Right.
If I swept streets and I felt that I did it better than anybody else, I could be a very successful man.
Yeah.
I remember reading headlines in papers when I was an out-of-work actor in the 40s here in New York. On the front page of the Times, I couldn't buy it, but I would look at it. On the front page of the Times in the corner of Times Square, it said, "Successful railroad tycoon kills self." And I remember thinking, I never forgot that.
Wow,
I thought,
successful.
if he's so damn successful, why did he kill himself?
Because he
What is
wasn't
success?
successful as a human
Yeah.
being.
He was not at all happy.
Yeah.
Anyhow, now I've blown what you asked me.
Well, let me come. Here's where I'm going. Is how did Mamet bring you?
When I talk about, or you were saying, oh God, that part, I live for that.
Yeah.
The toughest thing to me about success is that it breeds unemployment.
Yeah.
To this extent.
Why so?
When I first went out and did my very first film with Judy Holliday back in '53,
Yeah.
it was a hit. Thank heaven. I had a wonderful part written by my dear friend and mentor, in a way, Garson Kanin, and with the great Judy Holliday, and it was directed by George Cukor and written by Gar Kanin. They had done Born Yesterday, and oh my God, I thought, wow. And up to that point, I didn't give a damn about film. I really didn't. All I cared about was the theater and live TV, which was very close to theater. And so the picture came out, and it was a hit. So I came running into Columbia, where I had a contract, and said, "What's next?" And they said, "What do you mean, what's next?" "Hey, cool it. Wait till something good comes along." Well, I'm sitting there for a couple of months, and I said, what the hell is happening? This goes on year after year, the waiting in between to hopefully keep the same kind of a level. And you're going to make mistakes, obviously, of waiting for decent parts to come along.
Did Judy Holliday sit behind you at a screening of that first film and say to you, you're really good, or something to that effect?
How did you know that?
Well, I heard that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it made
true.
you know then, and that made you feel...
It meant a lot to me because I looked up to her so much.
And she
But
patted you on the back and
said that
said,
halfway
"Jack."
through, she whap you on the shoulder, right behind me after a particular big scene we had, and then when I made an exit, the audience clapped.
But this is the closing of the door, and you came back. Was that?
And I came back in, yeah. And I didn't know that audiences didn't normally do that in films. I didn't. Anyhow, she whacked it, and she said, "That's it, kid." Yeah. And I loved her.
Tell me about a life in the theater and being able back to that. And here you've got these two great mammoth screenplays to work with. The first one being Glengarry Glen Ross, and then he wants you to do, or somebody wants you to do, A Life in the Theater.
Yeah.
The story of an older actor and a younger actor.
When I read it, at first I had not seen it.
Yeah.
I knew of it, and I knew it was a story about an older actor and a younger actor that shared a dressing room in a theater, and they had a sort of father-son relationship, let alone the professional one. And that it's sort of bittersweet and extremely touching and dramatic at times, but also terribly funny. It has more humor, I think, than any other piece that David has written. And it's his most popular play throughout the world. I didn't know that.
This is the most popular mammoth play?
Yeah. Despite, the Pulitzer Prize and so forth for Glengarry and everything, this is the most popular play around the world.
Why do you think it is?
Possibly because the relationship really is one that is universal between the older actor and the younger one, or father-son, if you will, and the humor that is very evident in it when they are doing bits of plays. About 7 or 8 times on stage, they are doing a scene from a play, a different play each time, because they're in repertory. And every single one of them is very funny. Something always goes wrong, and usually we're blaming the other one or somebody off stage, but not us. I never went up in my lines ever. He goes up every single time he gets out on the stage. He can't remember his name. But at any rate, it really, I could not believe it was written by the same man.
Yeah, because of
I
comedy.
said, this is somebody else is using David's name, but he's just as good. It's brilliant. But it is just, it's filled with such love and tenderness and appreciation and concern and care about the theater and about actors. It's written with great love.
A Life in the Theater. Here's a clip. Take a look.
Now all the youth of England are on fire, and silken dalliance in the wardrobe lies. Now thrive the armorers, and honor's thought reigns solely in the breast of every man.
Ah, sweet poison of the actor, rehearsing in an empty theater upon an empty stage.
Good evening.
But full of life, full of action, full of resolve, full of youth. Please, continue. I'd like you to. I'm sorry. Does this upset you? Does it upset you when someone is watching? I'm sorry. I understand that. It is good. It is quite good. I've been watching for a while. I hope you don't mind. Do you mind?
Well, I only just began.
Yeah, I know. And I have been watching, and it seems so full. You're very good. Have I told you this lately? You are becoming a very fine young actor. See, the flaws of the youth are the prerequisite of the young. It is the prerequisite of the young to possess the flaws of youth.
It's fitting, yes.
Don't mock me. John, you shouldn't mock me. It's too easy. It is not good for you. No, and that is a lesson we have to learn, that you should learn.
And what is that?
That it is a hurtful flaw to confuse sincerity with weakness, John. I must tell you something.
And what is that?
It's simply this. In the theater, as in life, and the theater, of course, is a part of life, you see what I'm saying? That just as at the beach or at the grocery store, one cannot separate the time one spends. It's part of your life, do you see? In addition to the fact that what happens on that stage is life of a sort. It's a part of our lives.
So what do you think of this guy?
It's interesting. I had to do absolutely zero research on the character. I don't mean by that it was easy to play. Nothing that David writes is easy. Nothing that any great playwright writes is easy. One would think the better the writing, the easier it would be to play the part. but it's not quite true. Some actors disagree with me on this, but I think that the worse the part, or you know, the shallower the writing, you're limited to only 2 or 3 ways what you can do with it. Your contest then is, how do I make it at least a little interesting?
But good writing leads to lots of
Oh
interpretation.
God, you can just keep peeling layers off and peeling layers off, and you can still find something else. You know, you're never fully satisfied that you've really gotten the best selection, scene to scene, of how to play the character, because 19 out of 20 different ways will be legitimate. What's the better one? One of them is going to be more exciting.
Was this easier because, not taking all the Mammoth's words, but taking your own experience, you're talking about a life lived, so that it also leads you to think of all more interpretations, but at the same time it's familiar territory for you, more so than
I
being...
think it would be difficult to play that part if I were an actor who had been trained everywhere but on the stage to fully understand what the theater really makes an actor feel like. And when this man who adores the theater, even though he's a fading, almost a star, never a star, but a good supporting character man, probably played Broadway off and on at times, never the lead, and he ends up in regional theater somewhere as the sort of the character star of a little company, without knowing what that feeling is really like, which is indescribable, of an audience and that tight wire between you and an audience when you do have them. In a drama or a comedy, it cannot be described, it can only be felt. But he speaks so much with such passion about the theater that having been through that would be a tremendous aid to any actor. If he had not been trained in the theater, it'd be very difficult, I think. But I've seen actors like him. The antithesis of me, I've been lucky. For 4 decades, I have fortunately been able to still be around, and we're here today talking. But not with this fellow. But I have worked and known actor after actor after actor that is like him, that would end up in stock. I played in stock when I was younger.
You knew
with
along
people
the way,
I knew.
who somehow did not have...
The average actor, forgive me, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Charlie. The average actor does not have as good a life as this man had. The average actor is out of work. He's moonlighting.
And so when you think of the career you've had and the opportunities, even though been a little valleys where you waited for a Glengarry Glen Ross or Save the Tiger or Days of Wine and Roses or other things to come along, you look at your career and you think the difference in me and those who I knew were good, and when I was 30 they were damn good too, and where I am, in fact, I, like Paul Newman, like Walter Matthau, and not that many who've had that long a career. What's the difference, you think?
Some of it is luck.
Right.
There is just a handful of us. Paul, Walter, and me, and just a few others are the only ones that I can think of that started out together right after the war. And that's not the Korean War. That's
the big one.
That's the biggie. Back in the late 40s, mid and late 40s.
You were in that war.
Yeah, I was
the tail end.
At the tail end of it, yeah. There's very few of us left. There is an element of luck there, of being able now and then to get the right part at the right time to get you up there in the first place. But then, every now and then, to get a film that really works, critically and at the box office, etc., and with the public, so that you are still in demand to get good parts. There's... just very briefly, after I had done Roberts and won a supporting actor award and everything, I didn't realize that in my youthful bliss that I was a little bit full of myself, I guess, at one point.
How was it expressed?
And when I came back to New York for the first visit after the awards, I bumped into a very dear friend of mine who helped me a great deal at first, who's no longer with us, named Myron McCormick. Myron was a wonderful stage actor and someone who helped me when I was a kid starting out, advising me, and an old friend of the family. I bumped into him at Sardi's Bar, and we were talking and talking and talking. Apparently it was me doing most of the talking, and it was all about Mr. Roberts and the thing and the awards and Ensign Pulver and how I saw the part and all of this and that, and Myron
you
was
and Hank
patiently
Fonda and you
listening.
and so on. Yeah, right.
Now we go
Like
out,
fellow
and now
actors.
we're walking down the street, and we go about 2 blocks, and finally, and I'm still talking about it, Myron stopped me. He said, "Jack," he said, how far have we been walking? I said, I 2 blocks. and so forth. He says, you know, you probably passed about 6 actors already. They could have played that part better. But you got the part. Okay? I said, yeah. I never forgot. And that is true. When I'm sitting here saying, oh, God, the wait's in between and everything, I should be so lucky. I forgot to make that apparent. I mean, I'll live with that any day. The long waits in between, sometimes up to a year, waiting in between for something to happen. It took 1.5 years to get Days of Wine and Roses off the ground. It took a year, almost 2 years for Save the Tiger. Nobody would touch it. It took a long time to, not as long with Missing, but it took a long time to get China's Syndrome off the ground. And I waited and I waited, and I'm thrilled that I waited all those times. But those waits are worth doing 15 films with people that are not that good as writers, not that great a director, and not that wonderful as fellow actors. You know, the one experience is worth 15 to work just for the sake of working. In other words, I've had it good, and I'll take the waits anytime. I'm fully aware of all the good
Let me go back to that time you had those 10, you had a series of comedies. I mean, and you won the Oscar for Ensign Plover and Mr. Roberts. Did you then, was there some sense that I ought to make sure that they're not just typecasting me as a comedic actor, and you were looking for something to show this other side
exactly.
of it?
Yeah. That's and what did it was Days of Wine and Roses.
Because you wanted to say, I'm more than this.
I felt that I had done 400 or 500 TV shows. I played a lead on Broadway. I had done 2 or 3 seasons of stock, etc. Which was terrific experience because I think it's very hard to act in film. I really do. Until you can really get some under your belt, the shooting out of sequence and little bits and pieces and everything really throws you.
Harder than theater?
Oh, yes. I think it's much harder than theater, even though in theater that curtain goes up and that's it. Yeah, I don't care if you can shoot a scene 50 times. It is still harder, well, in this sense. I think it's more difficult to give a comparably good performance of the same part on film, if it were feasible, as it would be to give it on stage, because you can get going and rolling and you complete the scenes. You keep on going. You can build and keep going and not stop, picking it up in the middle, picking it up on a cut, and shooting out of sequence, shooting the end of the film in the middle, etc. You have to get used to it. It's a special technique, really, and you're much more in the hands of a director very often than you are in the theater.
You know, Blake Edwards did Days of Wine and Roses, didn't he?
Right, yeah.
You know, because of all the comedies he's done there, we forget that this was a Blake Edwards film.
Yeah.
Way back, growing up outside of Boston, your dad was a business executive.
Yeah.
Your mother, have any theatrical experience at all?
No, she always wished that she had gone in the theater. She had a very lovely singing voice, and she had hoped that she could have tried to somehow or other be a singer, and in some form or other, some way, whether she wanted to, I don't know, sing in supper clubs or be in the theater or what, I don't know. But at that point, she said, nice young girls, very often the families would say, you do not go in the theater. And
Nice
that was
girls
the
do
end
not
of
go
that.
to the theater.
So when I wanted to go in the theater, she was thrilled.
When did you know, though? I mean, did you know before you went to prep school?
A little bit, yeah, when I was about 8 or 9.
What happened?
I took over for Billy Tyler, who was a friend of mine, lived up the street, and he was doing a play at school. And the day that they were going to give it during the lunch period at school, Billy was sick, and he couldn't show up. So the teacher said, look, Billy has these 12 lines, this one speech. He comes out and he just says it to the audience, so you say it. I said, well, when am I supposed to learn this? And he said, well, try in between classes to learn it. We'll do it at lunch. And he said, if you don't remember the lines, I'll be in the wings, and you just saunter over, and I'll whisper the next line. Well, Billy was about a foot taller than me, and the hat that he wore came down like this over my ears, and this cape down to his knees was dragging on the floor like Marie Antoinette's train or something. And they started to laugh when I walked out. So I stood in the middle, and
So you had laughter in the beginning because of the costume.
Right off the bat, the way I looked. And so I just didn't look at anybody. I looked straight into the back of the room, and I said the first line, and I couldn't remember the next. So I walked over, and I guess I leaned or something like this, and the teacher said the line, and they all knew it. They started to laugh again. Well, I had to do this about 3 times. I was totally thrown. And the laughter started to build. I would have been turned off forever, or, as happened, somewhere inside a voice said, I think I like this.
Yeah, so
do it again. I did it every single
yeah.
line.
So I'm doing something that's getting the approval of my peers.
It had nothing to do with talent.
Yeah.
It had everything to do with getting approval.
And were you a shy kid?
Yes.
You were shy.
Yeah. And I was suddenly being accepted.
Yeah.
You know.
So you said, this acting ain't so bad.
Big moment in my life.
Yeah.
I can remember it vividly. Yeah. To this day, at 68, I can remember it. And so obviously it was very important. Then I started in between classes. I'd make up stories. I'd tell, and the kids all started to come to me. It was the thing I could do.
Now, what did your father think about all this? Because
well,
he was a businessman
and
a very.
Yeah. He thought it was fine, except he was afraid for me only. He would
because
love
he knew it would be a rough life if you didn't make it.
It was a high-risk profession, like a professional athlete, and or maybe tougher. And he would have loved it if I'd started out in his business and
the donut business?
At the bottom. Yeah, he was with a company at that point. Eventually, he was with Hathaway Bakeries, and then he went with the Donut Corporation of America. But they didn't just make donuts; they made the machines that made them in windows with Maxwell House coffee. That was all his idea. And he had a series of shops around the country, and they made other different products, baked products, that would come in powdered form, sort of in formula form, and bread and everything else. And when he loaned me some money to go down to New York, he asked me if I loved it. And I'd already done summer stock, and I said, yeah, I really love it. And so he said, good, because the day I don't find romance in a loaf of bread, I'll quit.
Did he also make you pay back the $300 with interest?
Yeah.
With interest?
Yeah.
To teach you that's just the way it is.
That's the way it is, and that's what I should do.
I'm loaning you to this because there's no free lunch.
It took me about 3 years, but I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he the most profound influence on your life, probably, when you think back? Because you say, I read that you have said that you still get letters from people who say,
yeah, that
your dad was
knew
a
him or
remarkable
worked with
man.
him, and that
I do too, about my father. It always touches you to understand. And how can you be as good a man as your father was? I mean, you must have gone through that at some point.
I think I worried about that a great deal. I was well into my 30s, long after Academy Awards and all of this baloney and everything, before I realized that I had never been totally relaxed with my dad. We loved each other, and I was an only son, and we were pals and father and son. But still, I didn't realize that I really held him in awe to a point where I really was not loose with him, as Chris is with me, thank God. I think.
And did you learn from that experience so that you want to translate it to Chris and Courtney and your children?
Yeah, and hopefully I have.
Yeah.
I certainly have been aware of it and tried to. It was not anything that my dad did consciously, but he put, I put him up on a pedestal as someone not only successful, but as someone who was revered by the people that worked with him.
A wise
highly
man.
Loved, a terrific guy, a great sense of values, a wonderful personality, and he could have well been an actor or been in showbiz. He could tell stories and jokes and everything, as I did. I emulated him when I was this kid trying to get acceptance. There's no question of that.
When did he die?
He died 28 years ago.
Yeah, but so he saw at least a good 10 years of your experience. So he saw the Oscar performance?
My mom died a number of years ago, too, but both of them did at least live to enjoy that.
It's wonderful to be able for a parent to be able to see their child. It doesn't have to be famous. It doesn't have to win an Oscar, but to see them do something so that they can realize values have been reflected in their children that they believed in terms of
Absolutely.
achievement.
That's one of my greatest joys, is at least that happened.
Yeah. When did you learn the piano? Was that when you...
I started, I took lessons for a few months, really, over very little time, when I was about 8, I'm guessing around that same time that I fell in love with acting, 8 or 9. And for some peculiar reason, as much as I love music, I don't know why, it didn't hit me then. And I didn't practice at all, I didn't learn, but I had an ear. So when she would be playing something simple, my piano teacher, Miss Levino, I would listen to it and I'd go, ah, ha, ha, ha. And then I would go over it a couple of times by ear before she came the next week. And I tried to play. She said, "No, you made 2 mistakes there." "Did you really work?" I said, "Yeah, I didn't know. I was doing it by ear, and I had the baseball glove and the bat under the piano, ready to go out with Billy, and play catch or something or other."
But it's been a friend of yours for all your life, the piano.
Oh yeah. So my family didn't push it. We quit the lessons. I went away to school at 13, and the kid next door in the next room was playing Gershwin records all the time, Rhapsody in Blue, Cuban Overture, plus the show tunes and American in Paris and so forth. And I said, "Jesus, that's wonderful stuff." And there was a piano in the dormitory, so I just started diddling around.
Was this at Phillips Andover? Where was this?
At Andover.
At Andover, yeah.
And a good friend of mine, Charlie Arnold, played the piano, and I think only by ear. And I said, "Well, he can do that. Why can't I do that?" And I'd watch Charlie. And then when he'd go away from the piano, I'd run, I'd hit that last chord of whatever he did, and then start fooling around. I almost flunked out every damn year because I'd sneak into the piano building.
Yeah.
I just suddenly went berserk about music and started playing by ear. But it's been, you know, like some people paint or write poetry or anything. It's been a tremendous
Do you have a piano on the set with you when you're wherever you are? If you're in a
wherever it's feasible, I do so that I can play in between.
There are those who say, you mentioned Gershwin's, who say that in fact some of your friends back then say that when you went to New York to be an actor, a theater actor, or a stage actor, that you really wanted to be Gershwin.
Both, I did. I was in and out of the Brill building. It was always slightly secondary to the acting, but I always thought, well, you know, while I'm becoming Barrymore, I can also replace Gershwin. I mean,
because I'm a man of many talents. After all, I'm a Harvard man.
Of course. We can do both. Neither happened. However,
has being a Harvard man, Ivy League, and all of that, I mean, what has that meant to you, and has it carried some imprimatur on you?
Yes. What I didn't realize, I always wondered in early years if I would have been better off had I, for instance, gone to a different college or university where they had a wider range of programs in the performing and creative arts, because Harvard did not.
And Yale, in fact, has more, doesn't it?
Yale did. I almost went to Yale instead, but being born and bred in Boston and everything, it kind of won out, and I stayed there. But in retrospect, I don't think so. I think that getting you cannot get a more wonderful university than Harvard, or a finer school in the world than Andover. I think that the general education that I got, and also the ability to be mixed in with people from all walks of life and from all different countries, let alone different cities, and everything, broadened my horizons in a way that an actor needs. You know, because God knows what parts you're going to be called upon. And it might be a fellow who's just because he came from the West, if you were really provincial, you might think, I don't understand this guy. How does he think or talk this way? You know, you never know what you're going to have to play. I think that a general education and learning how to think and just use your mind, and also to be exposed to people of different cultures, is probably more important than just studying drama.
Oh, it's more important than just studying business or anything else. I mean, I believe, journalism too. I mean, people always come to me and say, what's the best training? I always say English literature, or being able to communicate, some sense of being able to write, and some sense of a sense of history and a sense of economics. Those things are much more important than some craft courses. Same thing about acting. You were also head of Hasty Puddings, though, weren't you? Were you whatever the title is for the person who is
but that was kind of a fluke. It had nothing to do with
you
my
rigged the election or what?
Ability. No, but the members did. There was a very popular guy named Apple. So when they were running for elections, they said, well, let's nominate Lemon and Apple. This will be very interesting. I won by 1 vote. I think it was mine.
Yes. You then come to New York.
Yeah.
And how soon was it before you were acting? I mean,
it wasn't too long.
Radio first?
A couple of years, radio. And that's, the so-called starving actor bit. Right. Every actor goes through all of that. But I was lucky that it was only a couple of years before I could at least make a living.
And began to pay back your
as
dad's
an actor,
loan.
and pay Pop back at about $5 a shot. Anyway, I started doing soap. I finally got a break in soap operas. in radio. You know, the funny thing is in radio, though, God, I still go back. I was petrified.
Of radio?
Petrified in radio.
Yeah.
I was on 2 or 3 times a week as Bruce in Brighter Day, and then Butch Brent, the young Dr. Brent in Road of Life. And here were the lines right in front of me. And I was like this. And I couldn't figure out why. I don't know how I got the part. The first 3 or 4 auditions, everything I flunked. But I finally got this part, this running part. I realize it's because I only had my voice. I really admire good radio actors. That, as I was saying, it's a special technique for film. It certainly is for radio. To give a good radio performance and conjure the full imagination of the audience on the other end who sees nothing. They only hear. You can't use your face, and you can't use your body. God, I use my face and body so much. I didn't realize. I'd start to walk away from the microphones and everything, and the other actor would back it. I'd do everything wrong. I'd be so nervous, I'd turn the page and read the other guy's line at the top of the page. Oh, it was awful. Just awful. And Don McLaughlin, who was a seasoned and wonderful actor, was the lead. He was my older brother. About the 3rd or 4th show, I turned the page and read his line at the top after I had just read my line on the bottom. And he looked across the mic at me and went, and walked over and sat down at the table and left me alone at the mic. I thought I was going to die.
So you had to read all the lines.
So I had to read his lines and mine. Now, how are you going to do it? So I said, and I just started going, well, now, if you said to me, blah, 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 you know what I'd say? I would say to you, and I did it that way. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say this. And then you know what I'm going to say. I'm going to say that. And everything. Well, he started. The tears were coming down. I looked into the control booth in total panic, and there was nobody. The director had disappeared, and 2 feet were sticking up. He was on the floor, and his feet were up, and he was going like that. God, there was some wonderful. Jesus,
this was live.
Oh, you betcha.
Yeah.
You bet it was live. I don't know how I got through it. I never pulled that one again, though. I made very damn sure. Then I did what every sensible one does. You take a pen or a pencil, you circle your character's name over the lines you're going to read. Always. Don't just leave it blank like that. It's too easy to make a mistake.
What was the first film role?
First film role was in a film called It Should Happen to You, with Judy Holliday.
Oh, the Judy Holliday
the
film.
one that Gar Kanan wrote, yeah. And it was a wonderful part and a wonderful experience. I really didn't care about film. I only cared about the theater and that. But Judy Holliday and everybody connected with the film made it such a great experience that I said, hey, this is ridiculous. You can do both, theater and film. There's no reason for that. And so I moved. About a year later, I moved on out to California and
did that string of comedies.
Eventually, those first 10 years before we could get Wine and Roses was almost all, because the first few were comedies and they worked. Boom. Every script coming in.
This was what, in the 50s, mainly in the 50s?
In the 50s.
Is this when you did Some Like It Hot?
No, Some Like It Hot was 59. Yeah, it was sort of in the middle of all of those. But Some Like It Hot was just before. I did Some Like It Hot, and then The Apartment, and then Days of Wine and Roses.
What was it about the combination of you and Billy Wilder?
I don't know. It's like me and Walter Matthau, my dear friend. We're on the same wavelength.
You did 6 movies together.
7, I think, 6 or 7. Billy would, even partway through the first film, after the first few weeks, Billy would start to say something to me, and I'd say, gotcha. I knew what he was thinking. I knew what he meant, and boom. And, of course, I loved and respected him. I'll tell you, if anybody had come to me, and it wasn't Billy Wilder, with this idea, because he was the great Billy Wilder, he would get actors without a script, and then know who he was writing for.
Jack, I've got a part for you.
It's what happened in a restaurant.
You say, I'll be there.
He described this thing in one paragraph. He said, 2 guys that witnessed the St. Valentine's Day massacre. The guys that are doing the massacre see them, and so they've seen them. They run in order to disguise themselves. They join an all-girl orchestra, And he said, so for 3/4 or more of the film, you're going to be in drag. Do you want to play it? Well, if anybody else had ever come up to me, I'd say, I think I'd like to read it first. You know, it might be...
Let me take a look at it.
Might be pretty... Just let me take a look at that with the schedule, you know. But I said yes. Boom. Right there and then in the restaurant. And months went by and nothing happened. And then he sent 60 pages. They were the funniest 60 pages I ever read, as was the rest of it. I still think it is the best comedy script I've ever read.
Yeah. When you worked with Marilyn Monroe, what was the tragedy of her life? Was she just scared of the camera?
To an extent, yes. What happened was, in my opinion, I'm going to be armchair analyst, as if I really knew, because we liked each other, and we respected each other, we got along great, and yes, she was afraid because she would be fully dressed and made up and everything and still sit for an hour or more in the little portable dressing room on the set and not come out until she had psyched herself up and could face the cameras.
Was it fear of failure?
I think she had been built into such an incredible figure of stardom and everything that although she wanted it, you know, as a young girl and struggling and an actress who wanted to be a star and all of that, it was of such enormous magnitude, in a sense like Marlon, as a man, you know, it became a recluse because he couldn't go anywhere, he couldn't do anything. He was the biggest star in the world.
You tell a story once that he had to hide in his car, in his car when he came out because there were always people waiting outside.
Yeah, he told me that himself. He used to hide in the trunk of his car, and the maid would drive the car down, an old Chevy or something, down the driveway because there'd be 20 photographers and so forth, out, you know, at the foot of the driveway, outside the gate.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah. But anyway, she obviously was unhappy. You could get just so close to her as a friend, and then you could just feel the curtain drop because she didn't want you to get closer because I don't think she wanted to get hurt again.
Now, I've forgotten at what point this was, what year this was, and where she was in all those marriages. It was just after Miller?
It was with Miller.
It was with Miller during that time.
She was still married to Arthur at that time, and that was 59 when we shot the film.
Yeah. You were an early supporter of President Kennedy? Were you?
Yeah.
I mean, you've always been
well, they both Bobby and Jack had gone to Harvard. And I knew them, but not well. I mean, I was not a close friend, but I knew them both.
Yeah. And liberal Democrats have always been your political...
More or less, yes. Yeah.
And in fact, after you did after you did Missing, you went to the White House and saw the Reagans.
Yeah.
And nobody brought up the film until
the very end.
Yeah. Until your wife? Was it your wife? Was it?
No, Jim Mahoney, who was a dear friend of ours and a publicist.
Yeah, right.
And he had handled Nancy when Nancy was acting. At one point, he had been her publicist, and he knew Ron, as we did, but we only knew them casually, and were totally different political persuasion, but it was very nice of them to invite us to the White House.
And he's a very nice man.
And he couldn't have been more charming, nor could she. I must say, they were just wonderful. And we were there for hours. I thought we'd be there 20 minutes.
Yeah, right.
He had everybody out of the Oval Room or wherever we were upstairs there, and we were having tea. And telling stories, and they were very anxious to hear all about how's such and such, what's going on, and all of that. And then finally, Jim, there was just the five of us, knowing full well that the night before at Camp David he had run missing.
So he'd seen,
and he had pinched the film because there was such a ruckus about it, and a press showing had to be canceled.
Because he wanted that copy
to take he wanted to
Camp
see
David.
It right away, and he took it to Camp David, and they saw it there. So we knew he had seen it. Nobody says a word. Now, after about 2 hours, Jim finally says, "By the way, have you seen Missing?" Well, Ron had a cup of coffee up to about here, and as Jim said that, he went and put it down. I think he did it on purpose, and we all broke up. And so forth, and Nancy said yes, and then there was a long silence. Nobody said anything, and of course the State Department had now come out and just condemned it as being totally untrue, which was untrue.
And there was a big lawsuit from the ambassador later sued for
$200 million bucks or something. Right. Anyway, then there was a long pause, and Nancy said, or Felicia finally said,
Felicia, your wife, yes.
Yes. how did you like it? And I thought, oh, God. And Nancy said, well, we wished it had a happy ending, which I guess is about the only diplomatic way she could slide out from under. And we all cracked up. And they could not have been nicer, I must say.
When you look at Missing and China Syndrome, films with a real message, there is a sense that, what am I trying to say? That those you have, in a sense, chosen films that you really believed in at some point.
Yes.
At some point you said, I'm doing just fine, I'll make it as an actor. I want my life's work to have another dimension to it.
Yeah. It's when you can find them, I think it's a terrific thing. Certainly when I was a much younger actor, you don't have time or I didn't have
just
the
focus on
ability
career
or
and
maturity,
ego. Right.
Exactly, to think of beyond being an actor and entertaining, hopefully, you know, and playing good parts. After a while, it began to dawn on me, not just through my work, but through others, that when you're lucky and you can get the right project, that must, I must say, it must stand on its own as a dramatic or comedic entity. If people are going to pay money for it, you know, we go back to the old Sam Goldwyn's thing. If you've got a message, send me a telegram.
Yeah,
otherwise,
right.
give me a script.
Right.
A so-called message film, unquote, you know, it's not a documentary. It's supposed to be
has to be
also
great drama.
entertaining.
A
In
great
other words, if as I feel the China Syndrome and say The Tiger, Wine and Roses, Missing, etc., those films have a little icing on the cake because beyond entertaining and being viable dramatic entities, they make you think. Yeah. If you can do that too, my God, what a privilege.
And those are the films you're proudest of, notwithstanding how
ways.
much Billy Wilder films made you laugh and how much you respected Billy Wilder.
There's a difference.
Gene Sachs said about you, if true greatness has escaped him, it is because he is so good at acting, which is in truth faking it. Now, you know what he meant?
Sure. Did you ever hear George Burns' description of acting?
No.
Well, I was in a restaurant when he came out with this at the next table. I thought I was going to die because I've never been able to describe what acting really is, except I know it must involve an audience. Yes. If you're just rehearsing in front of a mirror, then it's a form of masturbation in a sense. I mean, you're alone, and it's for your own amazement. It must involve reaction of other people to what you are doing. You're trying to show them something you've already found out about human behavior. But George was at the next table, and he said, I can't do his voice, but anyway, it happened one of those moments in a restaurant where there was a lull, and his voice was the only one I heard. And he says, I'll tell you the most important thing about acting, and he says, that's honesty. If you can fake that, you've got it made. And that's what it is. The whole thing is how well you can fake it, you see. Because there is nothing in dramatic truth that is akin to truth. It's all a fake and a sham, but there's a reason for it. And the whole thing is how well can you make it seem.
One last question. Do you still live with the dream of making the cut at Pebble Beach?
I almost pulled a Reagan. You betcha. Oh,
will you do that?
At the AT&T golf tournament, hey, did you see the Ryder Cup this year? Was that
boy,
something?
Tom Watson did a job, didn't he?
Yeah,
and
he
Ray
did.
Floyd and all
I'm going to make it this year with my pal Peter Jacobson. We played. He has the patience of Job. He's been playing with me forever. But one of these times we're going to make it. I honestly think that that we can make it this year. I really mean it this year. I think we can.
It's great to have you here.
Oh, thank you, Jack.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Jack
you.
Lemmon, A Life in the Theater, David Mamet's play, now a film on TNT. It's been a real pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
you.
Please come back.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.